Coach, thanks so much for joining us, particularly a few minutes early. Appreciate you joining us there. If you would take a minute to wrap up the game at ECU, please, and maybe your thoughts on the upcoming game against UConn in Philadelphia, please.
Yeah, I thought that our kids came out, against ECU with the right mindset. I've thought for a while that we have a good football team and we keep getting better every single week. And our goal the whole game was to play one play at a time. I thought our kids stayed in the moment. They stayed in the game. They just executed the calls that were in front of them in all three phases of the game. Didn't worry about the scoreboard. So that was one of my favorite parts of the game was that the guys just stayed in the moment, executed as well as they could, against a team that was competing really hard and, ended up at the end of the game, with, the scoreboard in our favor. So I was really proud of the kids, the way they fought, the way they played. The leadership from our older guys and from our single digits throughout the whole season has been really good. And then I think our young players that have gotten a lot of experience against some really good teams, the first 5 games of the season is starting to pay off, and they're starting to play like veterans. And we know we've got our work cut out for us. We've got a great passing offense, multiple on defense. UConn is with a lot of good players. You look at their roster, and they have a lot of length, especially in the back end and at their line positions. And the quarterback is spinning the ball really, really well. I've gone against, Coach Lashley's offense for the last 5 or 6 years in the SEC. Tremendous amount of respect for the offensive scheme. And, they got some really good parts, really good players that are executing, his offense at a high level. And then defensively, they give you some issues with some unique things that they do coverage-wise, pressures that they run, and, they're really sound defending the run game as well. So we understand the challenge that we have ahead of us.
Take questions for Coach Collins, please. *1 on your telephone keypad will put you in the queue, then the operator will introduce you.
We'll go next to Sean Pastor with Alice Daily.
Hey, Sean.
Hi, Geoff. Hey, I'm not sure how much of a chance you get to sort of look around the rest of the league on a week-to-week basis. But, this week, in particular, so, Tulane in their game, they scored on their first 7 possessions. UCF at Cincinnati, I think, scored 7 out of 8 times, had touchdowns. Memphis, put up the same kind of numbers against UConn. As a defensive guy, what do you, not particularly about, specific teams, but what has sort of happened to defenses that you see these numbers on a regular basis?
Well, I just think that, this league, the last couple of years has had a reputation for explosive offenses. And that's the trend. There's a lot of tempo, a lot of creative offensive minds. And now that, I'm in this league full time, and I just see the quality of the skill players that are in this league, is off the charts. I'd say the skill players in this league are comparable to any league in the country. And so I think it's a combination of really good coaching, creativity in the play calling, and some tremendous athletes across the board in this league that help the offensive numbers.
And are the defensive is that athleticism? Just are there more teams that are putting more athletes on offense? Or is there a little bit less athleticism on defense, or is there just other things that these teams aren't doing?
It's a common, right? And I think the pace of play. I think the offensive play call is the more plays you run, the more the more stats you're going to get, the more yards are going to be accumulated. So I think the pace of play, has a lot to do with it. So, along with really good players and really good scheme.
Okay. And about your defense, so, after the game on Saturday and then again this morning, Scotty Montgomery really praised the job that your defensive line did. And there's been a lot of sort of focus early this season on the linebackers are improving and your secondary is good. But, how good a job is that front 4 doing right now?
Well, I'd say it's a front 10. We had 10 to 11 defensive linemen. We had 10 defensive linemen play over 22 snaps in the game. With that kind of depth and that kind of rotation, I think Coach Panagos does an unbelievable job rotating those guys in, keeping them fresh. And if you have that kind of depth to be able to hold up to these tempo offenses, that helps. Because a lot of teams, you go from your first team to your second team, there's a significant drop-off. But I think the way we play and the way we do things with our above-the-line depth chart, all 10 or 11 of the guys that play along our defensive line consider themselves starters and consider themselves that when they get in the game they play, they're playing at a high level, and they're playing at a starter level. And I think that's the beauty of how we do set up our depth chart, set up how we run practices, set up everything that we do. So when guys get in, they're expected to play at a high level because we don't consider anybody in this program two-year just either above the line or below the line.
Okay. Last thing I wanted to ask was, again, after games, it seems like when I ask you about a fourth down decision or a third down decision, you always are pointing to, sort of predetermined stats or analytics and so forth. Have you always been that kind of oriented in making decisions on stats and analytics, or, as opposed to being a gut decision kind of guy? And if, how did that develop?
Sure. I've always gravitated to that, trying to find any edge, any kind of statistical advantage that you can find. That's always interested me. And then, however long ago, I think probably 9-10 years ago when the book Moneyball came out, all the things that I had been intuitive and kind of knowing and studying, it kind of crystallized and said, this is, somebody put it on paper that this is the wave of the future. And so we've been, intuitively been doing it, trying to find all of those advantages, all the matrix that you can, find to give you an advantage. And so now it's just become more common that people are doing it. And so it's kind of the same thing we've always done.
Okay. Did you, back at Western Carolina or Albright, were you making gut decisions?
we were doing Excel spreadsheets and trying to find any little piece of data, backfield sets, percentages, number of times the slots on the ball versus off the ball, run versus pass. So you try to glean any kind of information to give yourself an advantage. And there's some things that we did Saturday that we knew statistically tendencies where they were going to run the ball or where they were going to throw the ball, and we either kicked the coverage or kicked the front to take advantage of it. A lot of the things I got asked about, the number of tackles for losses that we had on Saturday, a lot of those we were using data that said here's where they're going to run the ball and got the right stun or the right blitz or the right coverage check to take advantage of that information. So we've always done it, and now it's just become a little more mainstream.
Okay, thanks.
We'll go next to Ronnie Woodward with the Greenville Daily Reflector.
Hey, Ronnie.
Hey, Coach. You actually just broke down a lot of what I was kind of going to ask. But, from the ECU side, I guess, ECU, its offense looked really good against, Virginia Tech in South Florida coming into Saturday. But especially the quarterback running the ball, Cirque. Was that a point of emphasis for y'all? Like I said, you just touched on it. But how are you able to shut down the run game kind of as much as you did?
Right. I mean, obviously it always starts with our players. I thought our players did a great job studying the game plan, studying the opponent, and trying to pick up any little thing they could. But then at the end of the day, it's the execution. It's how hard our kids play, how they were fitting the run. We had some good things dialed up, but our kids, took that information, applied it, and played at a really high level. And we had a lot of guys that played and rotated through, and we didn't have a drop-off. But there were some things that, we used to our advantage and our players executed. So really proud of our players.
Okay. Thanks, Coach.
We'll go next to Mark Narducci with the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hey, Geoff.
Hey, Mark.
You said, hey, how you doing, Geoff? You had said after the game that Rykel Armstead, and you could tell he's really was banged up. He could not even barely walk on Thursday. Is there any thought of maybe just resting him and sitting him out some games just to get him right?
He's such a competitor. He loves this football team. He does anything and everything trying to take care of his body. He probably spends more hours in that training room than a lot of our training staff does. Just because he wants to take care of his body, he wants to produce, he wants to be a great teammate. So we could try, but Rock wants to be on that field playing with his friends and playing with his teammates so bad. We've had those conversations, but Rock's just one of the most competitive kids I've ever been around.
So it sounds like we might see him this week. What about the fact, though, that you did get some depth out of the backfield, and basically he only had 4 carries, and you got some other guys that stepped up?
Yeah, I was really proud of David Hood. He had a tremendous week of practice, and it showed when he got into the game. He was hitting the holes where he was supposed to hit them, running at a high level, running really, really hard. And then, Sharga got some carries late to get us some key first downs to milk the clock. And then Nitro, Rob Ritrovato, did a great job for us. I mean, he was our leading rusher against South Florida. So the kid can run the ball. We list him as a fullback, but he played a bunch of snaps at tailback. And then Trayvon Williams had a couple of carries, too.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go next to Matt Vender with Allscoop.com.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Coach. How's it going? So I just wanted to ask you about Keith Kirkwood as well. Obviously, he kind of had a bounce-back game on Saturday, 4 catches for 79 yards, and had that one-handed catch that made it on SportsCenter.
Nice, yeah.
Would you say, I know you said last week that he was dealing with an injury. Would you say right now that he's pretty much back to 100%?
Yeah, I think so. Keith's another one. I mean, for the last 2 weeks, he hasn't practiced very much, and it's just, fought and, worked really hard to take care of his body. We've limited him a little bit on defense. We've limited him a little bit on special teams, just because he's so valuable to the team as a receiver. And, the little things, too, that come up with him blocking in space, blocking on the perimeter, throwing his body around. Those are the things, the statistics are great, and the catches on SportsCenter and College Game Day are awesome. But just what he does for this team as a leader, as a physical competitor, he represents the single-digit tradition very, very well. And, obviously the highlight catches are great, but who Keith Kirkwood is on a daily basis is what this program is all about, and I'm really proud of him.
And on Saturday, it looked like Sean Bradley had another good game, 2 tackles for a loss. It seems like he just keeps improving as the season goes on. Just how much growth have you seen from game 1 at Notre Dame to now in Sean?
Yeah, I mean that whole entire group, you've just seen them develop and come together, and really the experience has paid off because they're all first-year starters. I think Coach Stacker's done an amazing job coaching that group. And the thing, the stats are great again, just like I said with Kirkwood, but Sean Bradley has to do so much cerebrally, making the calls, making the front adjustments, putting the stunts on, or calling the proper blitz, because we multi-call a lot of our blitzes and a lot of our stunts. So even though he makes has a productive day, his value to this team is as a leader and is getting us all lined up and getting us in the right defense. And, you can see as the season goes on, all of those things have been in place, but now it's really starting to gel, and the defense is playing at a high level. And a large part of that is the mental piece that our linebackers are providing and the leadership piece they're providing for the whole defense.
All right, thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
We'll go next to Tom Magnudo with the Temple News.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Geoff. How are you?
Good.
Good. I just wanted to ask you about Armstead. Mark kind of mentioned it earlier, but I know you said that after the Villanova game that he was banged up, after the Notre Dame game and after the Villanova game, so he was a little banged up. Is it the same injury he was dealing with then that's just lingering, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. You play running back in this league against some really good opponents. You're going to have some aches and pains, and he's a tough kid, and he rehabs his body and takes care of it so that he can play for his team.
And then, with the running game too, Ritrovato, he got a lot of touches on Saturday against ECU. Was that just in the game plan just to get him more touches than Sharga, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, the game plan was to get him touches and Shark touches. We had Nitro play a little bit more tailback than we had Nick doing, but Nick's playing at a high level for us. Nick's one of the first kids down on kickoff every single week, does a tremendous job for us on punt team. He's one of the captains of the punt team, and, so they do a great job contributing in every single phase of this football team.
And I know you really don't talk about injuries either, but is Jovan Fair any closer to getting back this week against UConn?
We hope so.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the defense goes, I mean, it seems like every game they're getting more comfortable, I guess, in the scheme and just better out there throughout each game. Could you just like evaluate your defense through the beginning of the season so far?
Absolutely, and I think the more they're comfortable with the terminology, it's a complex system. It's an NFL-based system, and it's had a lot of success, and the kids are. I think they've got a really good grasp of it, understanding formational tendencies, understanding backfield sets, splits of receivers. We are a leverage-based defense, and everything we do, we set leverages, and we work everything toward that leverage. And the kids are getting really comfortable with it, and they're playing at a high level. We've got a lot of kids that are playing at a lot of positions, rotating through, and are still playing at a high level, which is good to see.
And just one more thing about the defense. I mean, Delvon Randall this season, he's really upped his game to just like taking it to a next level. You've coached a lot of good defensive backs in your coaching history. So like, what have you seen like throughout the spring, summer, him like take that next step like this season?
Right, and the all-season conditioning program. I mean, he earned a single digit throughout spring ball, which is no small task. And then he's just continued to get better. He's a man on a mission. He wants to be special. And I show him tape of some of the guys that I've coached before all the time. And so he can see that the things that he's doing are things that some of the great players that are in the NFL that I'm coaching or that I've coached before are doing. And he's just like a sponge. Any little bit of detail we can give him. Him and Sean Chandler, there were 3 plays that would go completely unnoticed, but we got them to throw into double coverage on Saturday by some of the things that Champ and Delvon were doing with their disguises and some different things we were doing. And those would go completely unnoticed, but those kind of things when the NFL scouts turn on the film and watch those guys being able to execute at a high level physically, but then able to apply some things we were doing coverage-wise and the disguise change-ups, those are money makers. And I've just been really proud with their development and, how hard they played. You got 2 single digits roaming the safety position, you've got a chance to be pretty good defensively.
And just, what film did you show them?
We have to cut it short.
We've got
okay.
All the great guys.
Thanks, Geoff.
Thanks, bud.
Coach, thanks so much for joining us on the call today. We look forward to hearing from you again next week.